62. Bring on a good coach. After a rare disappointing round on the golf course, Tiger Woods will often take a golf lesson. When I first heard about this, I asked myself who could give Tiger Woods a lesson in golf? But that was before I ever really understood the value of coaching. The person who taught me that value was a young business consultant named Steve Hardison. Hardison taught me this. Tiger takes a lesson not because his coach is a better player who can give advice and tips, but because his coach can stand back from Tiger Woods and see him objectively. Steve Hardison had created an art form of coming into corporations and seeing things objectively. In fact, his perception ran deeper than that. He had near psychic power to see what was missing. It was a gift he could also apply to individuals, but only if they were ready for the rigors of his coaching. I used to teasingly call one of his illustrative personal stories the parable of the mission. As a young missionary for his church in England, Hardison broke all records for enrolling congregants. He contrasted his own method with that of the other missionaries. While the others would rush out and knock on doors all day, Hardison would spend the first part of each day planning and plotting his activities. By creating his day before it happened, he was able to combine visits, economize on travel time, and increase the number of enrollment conversations in a given day. He also used his creative planning time to set up intra-neighborhood referrals for himself so that many of his visits came with a reference. The other missionaries were very active, but they were focused on the activity, not the result. They were in the business of knocking on doors and scurrying about. Steve was in the business of enrolling people into the church. The records he set for enrollment were no accident. He planned things that way. Steve helped me understand something that lives inside of all of us, something he called the voice. When you wake up in the morning, the voice is there right away, telling you that you are too tired to get up or too sick to go to work. During a sales meeting, when you are just about to say something bold to a client, the voice might tell you to cool it. Hold back. Be careful. The trick is, said Steve, to not ignore or deny the existence of the voice, because it's there in all of us. No one is free of the voice. However, you don't have to obey the voice. You can talk back to the voice. And when you really get good, you can even talk trash to the voice. Make fun of it. Ridicule it. Point out how stupid it is. And once you get into that way of debating your own doubts, you start to take back control of your life. Many times I'd be in the middle of a large business project and ask to meet with Steve for an hour. After he listened for a few minutes, he would almost invariably see right away what was missing in my behavior. Like a great golf teacher watching Tiger Woods' backswing, he would say, "Are you willing to accept some coaching on this?" And I would eagerly say yes. Then he would tell me truthfully, sometimes ruthlessly, what he saw. I didn't always like what he saw, but I always grew stronger from talking about it. Hardison's coaching was so jolting that sometimes it reminded me of an incident that happened to me when I was a boy playing Little League baseball. I had injured my knee in a play at third base, and when the game was over, the knee was swollen and my entire leg was stiff. As I sat on the bench with my leg straight out in front of me, a doctor whose son was on our team was kneeling down by my leg as my father looked on. "I'd like you to bend your leg now," he said to me as his hands gently held my swollen knee. "I can't," I told him. "You can't?" he asked, looking up at me. "Why can't you?" "Because I tried and it really hurts." The doctor looked at me for a second, and then said simply but gently, "Then hurt yourself." I was startled by his request. Hurt myself? On purpose? But then, without saying anything, I slowly bent my leg. Yes, there was tremendous pain, but that didn't matter. I was still mesmerized by his request. The doctor massaged my knee with his fingers and nodded to my father that everything would be okay. I'd have to have x-rays and the usual precautionary exam, but he saw nothing seriously wrong for now. But I was still aware that something very big had just happened to me. After a boyhood that was characterized by avoiding pain and discomfort of any kind, all of a sudden I saw that I could hurt myself if I needed to, and that I could do it calmly without batting an eye. Perhaps I wasn't the coward I'd always thought I was. Perhaps there was as much courage in me as in anyone else, and it was all a matter of being willing to call on it. It was a defining incident in my life, and it was not dissimilar to the way Steve Hardison as a coach has required that I call on things inside me that I didn't know I had. One time I was having a hard time enrolling people into seminars and doing my prospecting calls on the phone. Steve grabbed the phone and started calling people and signing them up. Then he accidentally dialed a wrong number and reached some mechanic at a car repair garage. Most people would have apologized at that point and hung up and dialed again. But rather than waste the call, Steve introduced himself and then stayed on the phone until the mechanic had signed up for a seminar. Hardison is a gifted and courageous public speaker, a resourceful and relentless salesperson, a talented athlete, and a committed family man and church member. The kind of guy who used to make me sick. I could write an entire book about Steve Hardison's remarkable work in coaching and consulting, and someday I just might. Examples of ways that he coached me to higher levels of performance are plentiful, but I think the greatest thing he has taught me is the value of coaching itself. Once you open yourself up to being coached, you begin to receive the same advantages enjoyed by great actors and athletes everywhere. When you open yourself up to coaching, you don't become weaker, you grow stronger. You become more responsible for changing yourself. In The Road Less Traveled, M. Scott Peck writes, "The problem of distinguishing what we are and what we are not responsible for in this life is one of the greatest problems of human existence. We must possess the willingness and the capacity to suffer continual self-examination. The best coaches show us how to examine ourselves. It takes courage to ask for coaching, but the rewards can be great. The best moments come when your coach helps you do something you have previously been afraid to do. When Hardison would recommend that I do something I was afraid to do, I'd say, I don't know if I could do that. So don't be you, he would say. If you can't do that, then be someone else. Be someone who could do it. Be De Niro, be Bruce Lee, be anybody, I don't care, as long as you do it. Coaching's contribution to my life is illustrated in these words by French philosopher Guillaume Apollinaire. Come to the edge, he said. They said, we are afraid. Come to the edge, he said. They came. He pushed them. And they flew. You can get coaching anytime. If coaching is appropriate for your golf or tennis game, it is even more appropriate for the game of life. Ask someone to be honest with you and coach you for a while. Let them check your swing. Let them tell you what they see. It's a courageous thing to do, and it will always lead to more self-motivation and growth. 63. Try to sell your home. Once, when Steve Hardison and I were discussing a few of my old habits that were holding me back from realizing my business goals, I blurted out to him, but why do I do those things? If I know they hold me back, why do I continue to do them? Because they are home to you, he said. They feel like home. When you do those things, you do them because that's what you're comfortable doing, and so you make yourself right at home doing them. And as they say, there's no place like home. Home can be an ugly place if it's not kept up and consciously made beautiful. Home can be a dark, damp prison smelling of bad habits and laziness. But we still don't want to leave it, no matter how bad it gets, because we think we are safe there. However, when we inspect the worn-out house more closely, we can see that the safety we think we're experiencing is pure self-limitation. It's very hard to leave home. Many of us try and fail many times. Noel Paul Stuckey wrote a hauntingly beautiful song called The House Song, which captures this feeling. The opening words are, "This house goes on sale every Wednesday morning and is taken off the market in the afternoon." After grasping Hardison's metaphor of home, I immediately saw that I needed to move out of my house. I needed to move up in the neighborhood. I needed a better home. A home that contained habits that would keep me focused on goal-oriented activity. Hardison helped coach me in that direction until the new activities began to feel like where I should have been living all along. Hardison's metaphor of home as the equivalent of old disempowering habits has stayed with me for a long time. Recently, while I was putting Together a tape of motivational music to play in my car. I included the energetic I'm Going Home by Alvin Lee and 10 Years After. As I drove around listening to it turned up all the way, I thought about what Hardison taught. I let the song be about the new home I would always be in the process of moving to. Don't be afraid to leave the psychic home you're in. Get excited about building a larger, newer, happier home in your mind, and then go live there. In Colin Wilson's brilliant but little-known, out-of-print novel Necessary Doubt, he created Gustav Neumann, a fascinating character who made many discoveries about human beings. At one point Neumann says, I came to realize that people build themselves personalities as they build houses to protect themselves from the world. They become its prisoners. And most people are in such a hurry to hide inside their four walls that they build the house too quickly. Identify the habits that keep you trapped. Identify what you have decided is your final personality and accept that it might be a hasty construction built only to keep you safe from risk and growth. Once you've done that, you can leave. You can get the blueprints out and create the home you really want. 64. Get your soul to talk. We've always been a little nervous culturally about talking to ourselves. We usually associate it with insanity, but it was Plato who said that his definition of thinking was the soul talking to itself. If you really want to get your life worked out, there is no one better to talk to than yourself. No other person has as much information about your problems, and no other person knows your skills and capabilities better. And there's no one else who can do more for you than yourself. A lot of people in the motivational and psychological professions recommend affirmations. You choose a sentence to say, such as, every day in every way I'm getting better and better, and repeat it whether or not you think it's true. While affirmations are a good first step to reprogramming, I prefer conversations. Conversations work faster. The two most inspirational guidelines to productive self-conversational exercises are in Martin Seligman's Learned Optimism and Nathaniel Brandon's The 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem. Seligman offers ways to dispute your own pessimism and create the habit of optimistic thinking. Brandon offers provocative sentence stems for you to complete. Rather than brainlessly parroting, I'm getting better and better to myself, it makes a longer-lasting impression when I logically argue the case and win. With enough back-and-forth conversation, I can prove to myself that I am getting better. Proof beats the parrot every time. As one thing to try to hypnotize myself through repetition of words to accept something as true, and it's quite another to convince myself that it is true. Brandon suggests that we get our creative thinking going each morning by asking ourselves 2 questions. 1. What's good in my life? And 2. What is there still to be done? Most people don't talk to themselves at all. They listen to the radio, watch TV, gossip, and fill up on the words and thoughts of other people all day long. But it's impossible to indulge in that kind of activity and also get motivated. Motivation is something you talk yourself into. 65. Promise the moon. One frightening and effective way to motivate yourself is to make an unreasonable promise to go to someone you care about, either personally or professionally, and promise them something really big, something that will take all the effort and creativity you've got to make happen. When President John Kennedy promised that America would put a man on the moon, the power of that thrilling promise alone energized all of NASA for the entire time it took to accomplish the amazing feat. In his book about the Apollo 13 mission, Lost Moon, astronaut Jim Lovell called Kennedy's original promise outrageous. But it showed how effective being outrageous could be. In his book Passion, Profit, and Power, Marshall Silver recalls seeing a billboard in Las Vegas put up by one of the casino owners who wanted to become a non-smoker. The billboard read, "If you see me smoking in the next 90 days, I'll pay you $100,000. Can you see the power in that promise? A couple of years ago, I promised my children that I would send them to camp in Michigan. They had been, page under for 141, page 142, to the camp near Traverse City before and loved it. When you live during the year in Arizona, there's something magical about the water and emerald forests of northern Michigan. It was an expensive camp, but when I made the promise I was doing well financially and I was confident that they could all go. Then as the summer neared, I'd run short of money and had to rearrange my priorities. My speaking schedule had replaced much of the commission selling I was doing, and it looked like camp might not be in the picture. I remember specifically talking to my boy Bobby, who was 8 years old at the time, about how times were temporarily hard and how camp didn't look like a good possibility anymore this year. He was in the front seat of the car, and I'll never forget for as long as I live the look on his face. He said very softly, so softly that I could barely hear him, "But you promised." He was right. I didn't say I'd try, I didn't say it was a goal, I promised. And the feelings I had at that moment were so overwhelming that I finally said to him, "Yes, I did promise. And because you reminded me that it was a promise, I will say to you right now that you're going to camp. I'll do what it takes. I'm sorry that I forgot it was a promise." The first thing I did was change jobs, and my first condition on accepting my new job was that my bonus for signing was the exact amount of money it took to send my children to camp. It was done. 66. Make somebody's day. To basketball coach John Wooden, making each day your masterpiece was not just about selfish personal achievement. In his autobiography, They Call Me Coach, he mentions an element vital to creating each day. You cannot live a perfect day, he said, without doing something for someone who will never be able to repay you. I agree with that. But there's a way to make sure you can't be repaid. And that's doing something for someone who won't even know who did it. This gets into a theory I've had all my life, that you can create luck in your life. Not from the idea that luck is needed for success, because it isn't, but from the idea that luck can be a welcome addition to your life. You can create luck for yourself by creating it for someone else. Few know about someone who is hurting financially, and you arrange for a few $100s to arrive at their home, and they don't even know who you are. Then you've made them lucky. By making someone lucky, something will then happen in your own life that also feels like pure luck. I can't explain why this happens, and I have no scientific basis for. So all I can say is try it a few times and see if you aren't as startled as I have been at the results. It doesn't have to be money either. We have a lot of other things to give, always. When you get lucky, you'll get more motivated because you feel like the universe is more on your side. Experiment with this a little. Don't be imprisoned by cynicism posing as rationality on this subject. See what happens to you when you make other people get lucky. 67. Play the circle game. If you use my 4-minute, 4-circle goal-setting system described earlier, you can be the creator of your universe. You know, that's blasphemous, a seminar student once told me during a break. Only God can create the universe. But if you believe that, I said, you must also believe, as it is written, that we were all created in God's image. And if you believe in God as the creator and that he created us in his image, then what are we doing when we don't create? Whose image are we living in when we deliberately do not create? Try this. After you wake up in the morning, wipe the sleep from your eyes, sit down with a pad of paper and draw 4 circles. These are your own planets. Label the first circle, lifelong dream. And in order to keep this example simple, I'll make it strictly financial, although you can do it with any kinds of goals you want. Your lifelong dream might be to save $500,000 for your retirement years. So, put that number in your life circle. Then look at circle 2, the next planet in your solar system. That circle you will label my year. What do you need to save in the next year in order to be on course to hit your life savings goal? When you factor in the interest, it's less than you think. And when you arrive at the figure, make certain that it matches up mathematically with your first circle. In other words, if you save this amount and save, say, 10% more each year that follows, will you achieve your life number? If not, do some more math until you get it. Direct connection between your yearly savings projection and your lifelong goal. Now that you've got your first 2 circles filled with a number, move to the third circle, my month. What would you have to save each month to hit your year's goal? Then put that number down. 3 circles are now filled. Now go to the final circle. My day. What do you need to do today that if you repeated it every day would ensure a successful month? By the way, as I said, this doesn't have to just be about money. It can be about physical fitness, learning a language, relationship, networking, spirituality, nutrition, or anything important to you. The power of this system lies in thinking of it as a universe, which, as Wayne Dyer keeps reminding us, means one song. When you work the math, you cannot help but see that each circle, if done successfully, guarantees the success of the next circle. If you hit your daily goal every day, your monthly goal is automatically hit. In fact, you don't even have to worry about it. And if your monthly goal is reached, the yearly goal has to happen. And if your yearly goals are hit, the lifelong goal cannot not be reached. When you study the irrefutable mathematical truth contained in this system, a strange feeling comes over you. You realize that all 4 circles are ultimately dependent on the success of just one circle, the circle labeled My Day. Then you get the strangely empowering sensation that you have just proved on paper that your day and your life are the same thing. There is no future other than the future you are working on today. Your future is not stranded out there somewhere in space. This is what the great poet Rainer Maria Rilke meant when he said, "The future enters into us, in order to transform itself in us long before it happens." Remember that once you have worked out the math for this, the circle game is only a 4-minute daily exercise. Many times in seminars I give, participants will say that they are too busy for all this goal setting activity. They have lives to live. But I like to remind them of the words of Henry Ford, who said, "If you do not think about the future, you won't have one." And I also like to stress that I am only talking about 4 minutes a day. The purpose of making the circles mathematically sound is that you can remove the elements of faith and hoping from your action plan. You know your goals will be hit. Who would you want to bet on, the tennis player who has faith that she's going to win, or the one who knows she's going to win? By drawing these simple 4 circles, you can create your universe. Anywhere, anytime. Waiting in line at the bank, sitting in the doctor's office waiting for a meeting to begin, or just doodling. Each time you do it, your universe gets closer to you. Each time you draw the circles, you are hit with this revelation. There is absolutely no difference between succeeding today and having a successful life. In The Magic of Believing, Claude Bristol recounts a particularly absent-minded habit of his that, looking back, may have had a bigger impact on shaping his universe than he ever realized. He said that, whether he was on the phone or just sitting in moments of abstraction, he would always have a pen or pencil out doodling. My doodling was in the form of dollar signs like these, $, on every paper that came across my desk. The cardboard covers of all the files that were placed before me daily were covered with these markings. So were the covers of telephone directories, scratch pads, and even the face of important correspondence. Bristol's later studies on mind stuff experiments, the power of suggestion, and the art of mental pictures caused him to conclude that his lifelong habit of doodling dollar signs had had an enormous impact on programming his mind to always be opportunistic and enterprising when it came to money. The fortune he acquired demands that we take his observations seriously. 68. Get up a game. It is said that John F. Kennedy's father's credo was, "Don't get mad, get even." And that credo has a certain vengeful, clever wisdom in it as far as it goes, but you might go even further with this credo. Don't just get even, get better. When Michael Jordan was a sophomore in high school, he was cut from his high school basketball team. Michael Jordan was told by his coach that he wasn't good enough to play high school basketball. It was a crushing disappointment for a young boy whose heart was set on making the team, but he used the incident not to get mad, not to get even, but to get better. We all have those moments when people tell us or insinuate to us that they don't think we measure up, that they don't believe in us. Some of us have entire childhoods filled with that experience. The most common reaction is anger and resentment. Sometimes it motivates us to get even or to prove somebody wrong. But there's a better way to respond. A way that is creative rather than reactive. How can I use this? Is the question that puts us on the road to creativity. It transforms the anger into optimistic energy, so we can grow beyond someone else's negative expectations. Johnny Bench, a Hall of Fame baseball player, knew what it was like to not be believed in. In the 2nd grade, he said, they asked us what we wanted to be. Said I wanted to be a ball player and they laughed. In the 8th grade, they asked the same question and I said a ball player and they laughed a little more. By the 11th grade, no one was laughing. Our country has gone through a difficult period of time since World War II. We no longer value heroes and individual achievement as we once did. Competition has become a bad word. But competition, if confronted enthusiastically, can be the greatest self-motivating experience in the world. What some people fear in the idea of competition, I suppose, is that we will become obsessed with succeeding at somebody else's expense. That we'll take too much pleasure in defeating and therefore being better than somebody else. Many times during conversations with my children's teachers, I am told how the school has progressively removed grades and awards from some activities so that the kids don't feel they have to compare themselves to each other. They are proud of how they've softened their educational programs so that there's less stress and competition. But what they are doing is not softening the program, they are softening the children. If you are interested in self-motivation, self-creation, and being the best you can be, there is nothing better than competition. Teaches you the valuable lesson that no matter how good you are, there is always somebody better than you are. That's the lesson in humility you need. The lesson those teachers are misguidedly trying to teach by removing grades. Teaches you that by trying to beat somebody else you reach for more inside of yourself. Trying to beat somebody else simply puts the game back into life. If it's done optimistically, it gives energy to both competitors. It teaches sportsmanship, and it gives you a benchmark for measuring your own growth. The poet William Butler Yeats used to be amused at how many definitions people came up with for happiness. But happiness wasn't any of the things people said it was, insisted Yeats. Happiness is just one thing, he said. Growth. We are happy when we are growing. A good competitor will cause you to grow. He will stretch you beyond your former skill level. If you want to get good at chess, play against somebody better at chess than you are. In the movie Searching for Bobby Fischer, we see the negative effects of resisting competition on a young chess genius until he starts to use the competition to grow. Once he stops taking it personally and seriously, the game itself becomes energizing. Once he embraces the intriguing fun of competition, he gets better and better as a player and grows as a person. I mentioned earlier that I'd heard a report on the radio that there was a Little League organization somewhere in Pennsylvania that had decided not to keep score in its games anymore because losing might damage the players' self-esteem. They had it all wrong. Losing teaches kids to grow in the face of defeat. It also teaches them that losing isn't the same as dying or being worthless. It's just the other side of winning. If we teach children to fear competition because of the possibility of losing, then we actually lower their self-esteem. Compete wherever you can, but always compete in the spirit of fun, knowing that finally surpassing someone else is far less important than surpassing yourself. If you're better at a game than I am, when I play against you and try to beat you, it's really not you I'm after. Who I'm really beating is the old me, because the old me couldn't beat you. 69. Turn your mother down. Psychologist and author M. Scott Peck observes, to a child, his or her parents represent the world. He assumes that the way his parents do things is the way things are done. In Dr. Martin Seligman's studies of optimism and pessimism, he found out the same thing. We learn how to explain the world to ourselves from our parents, and more specifically our mothers. This tells us that young children listen to what their primary caretaker, usually the mother, says about causes, writes Seligman, and they tend to make this style their own. If the child has an optimistic mother, this is great, but it can be a disaster for the child if the child has a pessimistic mother. Fortunately, Seligman's studies show that the Disaster need only be temporary, that optimism can be learned at any age. But it is not self-motivating to blame mom if you find yourself to be a pessimist. What works better is self-creation. To produce a voice in your head that's so confident and strong that your mother's voice gets edited out and your own voice becomes the only one you hear. And as much as you want to eliminate the continuing influence of a pessimistic adult from your childhood, remember that blaming someone else never motivates you because it strengthens the belief that your life is being shaped by people outside yourself. Love your mom, she learned her pessimism from her mother, and change yourself. 70. Face the sun. When you face the sun, wrote Helen Keller, the shadows always fall behind you. This was Helen Keller's poetic way of recommending optimistic thinking. What you look at and what you face grows in your life. What you ignore falls behind you. But if you turn and look only at the shadows, they become your life. When I was younger, I remember hearing other kids tell a joke about Helen Keller. Have you heard about the Helen Keller doll? They would ask. You wind it up and it bumps into things. I've often thought about that joke and why such a joke about someone who was deaf and blind was funny. I think the answer lies in our nervousness about other people overcoming huge misfortunes. Perhaps we laugh nervously because we haven't overcome our own small ones. In our own day and age, we are quick to consider ourselves victims. We are all victims of some sort of emotional, social, gender, or racial abuse. We enjoy taking what difficulties we have had in life and blowing them up into huge injustices. Helen Keller didn't complain about being from a dysfunctional family, or of being a woman, or of not being given enough money from the government to compensate her for her handicaps. She had challenges most of us can't even imagine, but she refused to become fascinated by them and make her handicaps her life. She didn't want to focus on the shadows when there was so much sun. There is a bumper sticker that I see every so often as I'm driving around. Life is a bitch and then you die. I always wonder about that bumper sticker because it seems illogical. If life is that bad, death should be welcome. The sticker should say, life is a bitch, but the good news is, you die. British author G.K. Chesterton used to say that pessimists, like the person with that sticker on his car, don't stay anti-life very long. When you put a revolver to their heads, all of a sudden they can think of a million reasons to live. Those million reasons are always there, down inside of us, waiting to be called up. Our pessimism is usually a false front put on to get sympathy. Another popular bumper sticker has been shit happens. I happen to consider that bumper sticker to be ironically optimistic. It's one of the qualities of optimists that they are not surprised, overwhelmed, or offended by trouble. They know that trouble comes and they know they can handle it. Some people have been upset by the popularity of this slogan, and I've seen them try to counter with the sticker, love happens. Actually, they have it wrong. Shit does happen, but love does not. Love doesn't happen all by itself. Love is created. In his stirring book Sunrise, Barry Neil Kaufman tells an astonishing, true story of how he and his wife healed their once autistic son and helped nurture him to a happy, extroverted life. Kaufman and his wife made a conscious choice to see their son's disability as a great blessing. To them, it was just a choice, like choosing to face the sun instead of facing your shadows. But as Kaufman says, the way we choose to see the world creates the world we see. 71. Travel deep inside. Most of us wait to find out who we are from impressions and opinions we get from other people. We base our own so-called self-image on other people's views of us. Oh, do you really think I'm good at that? We ask when someone compliments us. If we're persuaded that they are being honest and have made a good case, we might try to alter our self-image upward. It's great getting feedback from others, especially positive feedback. We all need it to live and feel good. But when it's all we've got, we're in danger of being far less than we could be, because our self-image always depends on others, and all they see is what we're risking right now. What they never see is what's inside of us waiting to emerge. Because they can't see that, they will always underrate us. Your journey can be internal. You can travel deeper and deeper inside. To find out your own potential. Your potential is your true identity. It only waits for self-motivation to come alive. For this is the journey that men and women make, said James A. Michener, to find themselves. If they fail in this, it doesn't matter much else what they find. Let positive reinforcement and compliments be a mere seasoning to your life. But prepare your life's meal yourself. Don't look outside yourself to find out who you are. Look inside and create who you are. 72. Go to war. Anthony Burgess was 40 when he learned that he had a brain tumor that would kill him within a year. He knew he had a battle on his hands. He was completely broke at the time, and he didn't have anything to leave behind for his wife Lynn, soon to be a widow. Burgess had never been a professional novelist in the past, but he always knew the potential was inside him to be a writer. So for the sole purpose of leaving royalties behind for his wife, he put a piece of paper into a typewriter and began writing. He had no certainty that he would even be published, but he couldn't think of anything else to do. It was January of 1960, he said, and according to the prognosis I had a winter and spring and summer to live through, and would die with the fall of the leaf. In that time Burgess wrote energetically, finishing 5.5 novels before the year was through, very nearly the entire lifetime output of M. Forster, and almost twice that of J.D. Salinger. But Burgess did not die. His cancer had gone into remission and then disappeared altogether. In his long and full life as a novelist, he is best known for A Clockwork Orange. He wrote more than 70 books, but without the death sentence from cancer, he may not have written at all. Many of us are like Anthony Burgess, hiding greatness inside, waiting for some external emergency to bring it out. I believe that's why my father and many people of his generation speak so fondly about World War II. During the war, they lived in a state of emergency that brought out the best in them. If we don't pay attention to this phenomenon, how crisis inspires our best efforts, we tend to brainlessly create a life based on comfort. We try to design easier and easier ways to live so that we won't be surprised or challenged by anything. People who get the knack of self-motivation can reverse this process and get that wonderful World War II sense of vitality into their lives. Athletes do it constantly. How do you feel about tonight's game with the Trailblazers? Reporter once asked basketball star Kobe Bryant. It'll be a war out there, he said with a twinkle in his eye. We don't have to wait for something tragic or dangerous to attack us. From the outside, we can get the same vitality going by challenging ourselves from within. A useful exercise for self-motivation is to ask yourself what you'd do if you had Anthony Burgess's original predicament. If I had just a year to live, how would I live differently? What exactly would I do? 73. Use the 5% solution. Many years ago, when I first began considering the idea of changing my life, I went through some emotional mood swings. I would get very high on an idea of who I could be, and I'd set out to change myself overnight. Then my old habits would pull me back to who I used to be, and I would become demoralized and depressed for weeks, thinking I didn't have what it took to change. As the weeks went by, I finally caught on to the idea that great things are often created very slowly, so why couldn't great people be created the same way? I began to see the value in small changes here and there that led me in the direction of who I wanted to be. If I wanted to be someone who was healthy and had good eating habits, I would introduce a salad here, a piece of fruit there, and take the creative process very slowly. Now I almost never eat red meat, but it didn't happen by simply ruling it out one night. All the times I tried that, my stomach, which used to far outrank my mind in my internal chain of command, would rule it back in the first time I smelled a barbecue in the neighborhood. Psychotherapist Dr. Nathaniel Branden is known for the effectiveness in his therapy of using sentence completion exercises by asking his clients to write out or speak 6 to 10 endings quickly without thinking to a sentence stem. He allows people to explore their own minds for their hidden power and creativity. A typical sentence he might ask you to complete 6 to 10 times would be, if I bring 5% more purposefulness into my life today. Then you, the client, give your rapid endings to the sentence. That's how you find out what you think and secretly know about your own power to add purpose to your life. One of the fascinating aspects of Brandon's sentences is the 5% part. Seems like an awfully small amount of change when you look at it, but think of how it would play out if you brought 5% more purposefulness to your life. Each day, it would only be 20 days before you had doubled your sense of purpose. Huge things can be accomplished by focusing on one small action at a time. Novelist and Lamott recalls an incident in her childhood, the memory of which always helps her get a grip. 30 years ago, she remembers, my older brother, who was 10 years old at the time, was trying to get a report on birds written that he'd had 3 months to write, which was due the next day. We were out at our family cabin in Bolinas, and he was at the kitchen table close to tears, surrounded by binder paper and pencils and unopened books on birds, immobilized by the hugeness of the task ahead. Then my father sat down beside him, put his arm around my brother's shoulder, and said, "Bird by bird, buddy. Just take it bird by bird. When we stay the same, it's not because we didn't make a big enough change, but rather because we didn't do anything today that sent us moving toward change. If you continue to think of yourself as a great painting you are going to paint, then wanting to instantly change is like wanting to finish your portrait in 10 minutes and then put it up in the art gallery. If you see yourself as a masterpiece in progress, then you will relish small change. A tiny thing you did differently today will excite you. You want a stronger body and you took the stairs instead of the elevator. Celebrate. You are moving in the direction of change. If you want to change yourself, try making the changes as small as they can be. If you want to create yourself like a great painting, don't be afraid to use tiny brush strokes. 74. Do something badly. Sometimes we don't do things because we're not sure we can do them well. We feel that we're not in the mood or at the right energy level to do the task we have to do, so we put it off or wait for inspiration to arrive. The most commonly known example of this phenomenon is what writers call writer's block. A mental barrier seems to set in that prevents a writer from writing. Sometimes it gets so severe that writers go to psychotherapists to get help for it. Many writers' means of earning a living depends on its cure. The block, or lack of self-motivation, occurs not because the writer can't write, but because the writer thinks he can't write well. In other words, the writer thinks he doesn't have the proper energy or inspiration to write something right now that's good enough to submit. So the pessimistic voice inside the writer says, "You can't think of anything to write, can you?" This happens to many of us, even with something as small as a postcard to send or an overdue email to answer. But the writer doesn't really need psychotherapy for this. All he or she needs is an understanding of how the human mind is working at the moment of the block. The cure for writer's block, and also the road to self-motivation, is simple. The cure is to go ahead and write badly. Novelist and Lamott has a chapter in her marvelous book Bird by Bird called Shitty First Drafts. The key to writing, she says, is to just start typing anything. It can be the worst thing you've ever written. It doesn't matter. Almost all good writing begins with terrible first efforts, says Lamott. You need to start somewhere. Start by getting something, anything, down on paper. By the mere act of typing, you have disempowered the pessimistic voice that tried to convince you not to write. Now you are writing. And once you're in action, it's easy to pick up the energy and pick up the quality. Singer-songwriter Jon Stewart says, "When you're in the first stages of creating, never, ever censor yourself. We're often afraid to do things until we're sure we'll do them well. Therefore, we don't do anything." This tendency led G.K. Chesterton to say, "If a thing is worth doing, it's worth doing badly." Going out for a run gives me an example of the same phenomenon. Because I don't feel that I have a good strong run in me, the voice says. Not today. But the cure for that is to decide to do it anyway, even if it will be a bad run. I don't feel like running now, so I'm going to go out and run slowly in such lazy bad form that it does me no good, but at least I will have run. But once I start, something always happens to alter my feelings about the run. By the end of the run, I noticed that it had somehow become thoroughly enjoyable. In my self-motivation seminars, I often give a homework assignment for people to write down what their main goals are for the next year. I ask them to fill no more than a half page. This is not a difficult assignment for people who are willing to just come off the top of their heads and have fun filling the page. But you would be surprised at how many people absolutely anguish over it, trying to get it right, as if they were going to be held forever to what they write down. Many people simply can't do it. To get them to complete the exercise, I say, put anything down. Make something up. It doesn't even have to be true. They don't even have to be your goals, just do it so you can understand the exercise we're about to do. The point is to just do it. In many ways, we are all novelists like in Lamott. Our novels are our lives. And many of us get a tragic form of writer's block that causes us to not write anything at all. It's a tragedy because deep down we are very creative. We could write a great life. It's just that we're so afraid of writing badly that we never write. Don't let this happen to you. If you're not motivated to do something you know you need to do, just decide to do it badly. Add a little self-deprecating humor. Be comically bad at what you're doing. And then enjoy what happens to you once you're into the process. 75. Learn visioneering. A few years ago, I spent some enjoyable time working with motivational speaker Dennis Deaton and teaching his principles of visioneering, which he defines as engineering dreams into reality by the use of active mental imaging. When I gave my weekly Thursday night public seminars, I'd sometimes teach Deaton's visioneering concepts, and my then little daughter, Marjorie, would always accompany me. She helped hand out workbooks and pencils, and when the seminar got started, she would take a seat in the audience, open her own workbook, and participate. She was 10 at the time, and I was never certain exactly how much she was absorbing. Then one weekend afternoon by the pool at our apartment complex, I relaxed in a deck chair while Margie and her girlfriend Michelle played by the pool. There were a lot of people in and around the water that day, but above them all I could hear Marjorie and Michelle having a heated conversation down by the deep end of the water. "I just can't do it," said Michelle. "Yes, you can," said Margie. "You just have to believe you can." "I'm afraid to dive," said Michelle. "I've never dived in my life." "Michelle," said Margie, "listen to me. Will you just try it my way?" "I don't know," said Michelle. "Okay, what's your way?" "Just close your eyes," said Margie, "and picture yourself on a diving board. Can you see yourself standing up there?" "Yes," said Michelle. "Okay, good," said Margie. "Now, I want you to get an even better picture. What kind of bathing suit are you wearing? Can you see it?" "It's red, white, and blue," said Michelle, her eyes still closed. "It's like an American flag." "Great," said Margie. "Now picture yourself diving off the board in slow motion, just like in a dream. Can you see that?" "Yes, I can," said Michelle. "That's great," shouted Margie. "Now you can do it. Because if you can dream it, you can do it. Let's go over here and do it." Michelle followed her slowly to the end of the pool. I was looking over the top of my book but not letting them know I was listening. I was amazed. I had no idea what would happen next, but I noticed a number of people around the pool area watching and listening with fascination, while pretending not to. Michelle walked up to the edge of the water and looked very scared. She looked at Margie, and Margie said, "Michelle, I want you to keep saying very softly, 'If I can dream it, I can do it, and then I want to see you dive in.'" Michelle kept repeating, "If I can dream it, I can do it," and all of a sudden, surprising even herself, she dove a near-perfect dive into the deep end with almost no splash. Margie was jumping up and down and clapping when Michelle came up from the water. "You did it!" she shouted, and Michelle was grinning as she climbed up to do it again. Could it be, I thought to myself, that this system is this simple? The principle is this: you won't do anything you can't picture yourself doing. Visioneering is just another word for picturing yourself. Once you make the picturing process conscious and deliberate, you begin to create the self you want to be. We dive into the pictures we create.